If you think about how this affects the ADHD brain, we're curious, we're honest, we're recognizing patterns. Understand that you weren't punished because you lied, you were punished because you noticed. Hello, truth tellers. Welcome back to the ADHD Scapegoat Podcast. I'm Angie.
I'm Jeremy. Today we're going to discuss the confusion that comes from being constantly blamed without explanation. If you've ever asked for clarity and got shut down, if you have ever been blamed for asking too many questions or digging things up, you're not alone. Today we're getting into how the narrative becomes the lie and why the scapegoat is punished for wanting the truth.
Yeah, this is big.
Huge.
When truth is inconvenient, it should wake you up. It should pull you right out of any confusion, any doubt. The second you start to notice that the truth is a problem,
That should be a
wake
red
up.
flag. Yes.
Wake up. So, narcissistic or emotionally immature family systems depend on controlling a narrative. And the narrative is just a story that's told that everyone is supposed to fall in line, everyone believes, storytelling. Asking questions is a threat. Clarity is dangerous in these systems that have narratives, which we've talked about in the last two episodes, more so too. But if you think about how this affects the ADHD brain, we're curious, we're honest, we're recognizing patterns. Our hyperactivity is moving through all of the things that are happening around us, inside of us, our experiences, interactions, everything. And to look at these systems, understand that you weren't punished because you lied. You were punished because you noticed, because you brought it up, because you brought it to light and you didn't keep it hidden. In these systems, the truth isn't the goal, compliance is. And that's really hard for truth tellers to understand. Why don't they care about the truth? This is the truth. The truth matters. The truth is important. These toxic people ask you if you're telling the truth. That matters. Why doesn't it matter that they tell the truth? It's very confusing. And if you grow up in this, it's so confusing. You're supposed to believe these people that are your family. They're supposed to be your number one support. They're supposed to be the truth tellers who are honest with you, who teach you the right and wrong and your core values. They instill these in you. So when that's not what's happening, it's so confusing. So you start to think, what did I actually do that was so wrong to deserve this treatment? If you've ever asked that question and only got silence, blame, rage, you're not confused. You're being manipulated. In narcissistic family systems, truth is dangerous because it disrupts control. So write it down. Confusion is not a flaw. It's often the first symptom of gaslighting. The confusion is on purpose. It's part of the plan. I notice, like in my family system, if you're confused, you're belittled, like you're stupid or you're less than. But they're constantly moving goalposts and they're constantly changing. I didn't say that, you said that, or that didn't happen. You're making a big deal out of it. So they make it confusing. And then when you say, that doesn't make sense, and you ask clarifying questions, you're belittled for being dumb, for not understanding. So, what is the scapegoat's crime? Curiosity for clarity. Period. How asking, can we talk about what happened, when it's met with rage, silence, or blame? How ADHDers are especially vulnerable to this because we are the truth seekers. We talked about this in the last episode too. We're truth seekers. We have justice sensitivity, so we value fairness. You know, we believe that we're both held to those same rules and responsibilities. We struggle with rejection sensitivity and blame confusion, where we don't want to be the person causing harm. We, if it is our fault, let us know so we can fix it and, maybe mend whatever was broken. And when you look at that, the actual crime that they're saying, this is why we're scapegoating, or that, they don't say they're scapegoating you, but this is why they're scapegoating you. This is why they're blaming you for everything, is because you want honesty, you want fairness, and you want accountability. You weren't punished because you lied. You were punished because you noticed. It's crazy, right?
Yeah. And it's just crazy how early in our relationship, I noticed you were always scapegoated by being called dramatic. Oh, here we go. Angie's being dramatic. It wasn't necessarily Angie Weiner. It was just, oh, she's so dramatic. She's going to cause a stink about whatever the situation is.
Right. Yeah, it's hard. And ADHD brains are wired for curiosity. We're wired for that fairness. We pay attention to those patterns. And these are things that threaten these fragile egos and these false narratives. In emotionally immature families, asking, can we talk about what happened, is treated like a betrayal. Start honoring your questions instead of apologizing for them. So a lot of times you're asking the question for clarity. You're asking the question because you want connection. You're asking the question because you want to understand this person. You want to connect. You want to clear up any confusion you may have caused, if there is any. Because that's how you want to be treated. And they often make you apologize for even asking the question. Why do you care? What's your problem? Why do you care? And can we talk about what happened shouldn't feel like a threat. But in these toxic systems, it's treated like one. And we get blamed not because we're wrong, but because we're relentless in our search for the truth. We ask more questions. If they're able to respond with a lie, to think, okay, I'm going to put them off, and now they're not going to ask me another question. And we go, no, that still doesn't make sense. And then we ask another question. We're annoying. Oh my God, just give it up already. Like, leave me alone. I don't even care anymore. Things like that happen where you're like, no, that can't be right. And you just ask another question. Or maybe I didn't hear you right. Like, that would happen to me a lot. Maybe maybe you're telling me it's not clicking. Can you tell it to me in a different way? Or can you explain it to me? Almost like it was like a math problem. Like, I'm not really understanding what you're saying. Am I missing something? And then I would be yelled at. And it was like, huh? What's the problem? And I would always think to myself, if you're not lying, then why can't you just tell me? What's the problem? Like, if you ask me a question, I tell you the truth. And they know that. They know that you will tell the truth. That's the fear. So we're not blamed because we're wrong. We're blamed because we keep asking questions when it doesn't add up. And when accountability is treated like an attack, you're not actually in a relationship. You're in this narrative trap. You're in a manipulative situation. So make space for your version of reality, what you experienced, to exist without apologizing, especially when you're attacked.
I like that narrative trap. I think that's a good way to explain it.
Well, you feel stuck in it.
You are, because if you call them out on the mistreatment or you question any behavior, you are ridiculed.
You're being disrespectful.
Right. Or you're told that you're a liar.
Yeah.
And if you just sit in it, you're not being true to yourself. You become resentful and depressed, and you're allowing yourself to be manipulated, right? So it is a trap. There's no
right.
You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
And that's really what you feel like. And I think that's why, as the scapegoat, it's the easiest role that is received by the narcissist in the family system, because you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like, you literally cannot do any right. And that's even when my older sister would be like, oh my gosh, just say you did it so that you will just be, you'll be grounded for less time, or you won't get grounded. I was like, I'm always grounded. And also, even when I'm not grounded, I'm not allowed to do anything. So it doesn't matter. And they would come up with a narrative about, like, see, you didn't tell the truth, and now you're telling the truth if I gave in, to try to avoid that, which I don't even know if I ever did it. I might have done it once where I was just like, okay, fine. Oh, sure, I did it. And I was still grounded, and I was like, see, I knew I would still be grounded. But I think it doesn't matter, because they want to believe that narrative. So they try to break you and get everyone else around this narrative, so that they say, see, everyone else is on board with this except you. They're trying to other you. They're trying to bully. The whole point of telling this story, or, starting a smear campaign, or triangulating you against different family members is to do that. To make sure that you don't have support. They're your only support, so you better fall in line. So I think a lot of times, if you're not part of a family system like this, or this is your first time learning about it, you can step back and go, okay, which one's the narrative? Which one's reality? And how do I kind of, decipher that? So we want to talk about that, and being able to also tell who's the abuser, who's the victim, as well. So when you break down how these false stories are used, you have to look at intent. We've talked about that before. What is the intention that someone is telling the story? Why? And if you look at this story that comes out of nowhere, the way projection is used to blame you, it distracts from the abuser's behavior. If we're pointing at the scapegoat, no one's going to be looking at me. Another reason to use false stories is to isolate the scapegoat. Like I said, everyone else is against them. They're the problem. the other people in the situation might be like, okay, as long as I'm not being attacked, I'm just going to leave it alone. I'm not going to draw attention to myself, so I'm attacked. And, I see what they do to the scapegoat, so I don't want that coming at me.
And your siblings have told you that
Right.
directly. They've said that exact thing. Yeah, selfishly, I didn't want to be the target, and so I just let it happen to you.
Yeah. And I think within that, these false stories are able to control how others perceive you. So they're able to get ahead of you being able to show who you authentically are, or who, what you actually did. They're getting ahead of it. And when it comes to ADHD and masking and these trauma responses or having emotional dysregulation with zero support, those things are used against you as, quote unquote, evidence that you're the problem. And just like, my family acted like just getting my diagnosis was an excuse. It's evidence of her whining about something. It's an excuse instead of what it really is. And you're not being rejected for who you are. You're being punished for who you refuse to pretend to be. Masking your pain, hiding your questions, and faking peace to keep the family system intact. That's survival, not consent. Scapegoats, we often hold the truth everyone else is avoiding. And that's why we get exiled. We need to reclaim our story, especially from the people who never bothered to learn it. I think you can look back on things and, I wish I would have known sooner. I wish someone would have told me that, this smear campaign was going on behind my back. I wish they would have told me all these bad things that were being said sooner, because I wouldn't have given them more access to me. I didn't know that existed. But then I also look back and say, you know what? I went into that situation thinking that I'm talking to someone who is a decent human, a family member who cares about me, who, cares about these other family members, and, we can come together, any differences aside, or, whatever, and we're good people and we can work together. And then feeling completely spun around and wait, what just happened? I'm going to you with my concerns. I'm reaching out in search of support and love and understanding and coming together. And I'm being attacked and called selfish for what? It doesn't even make sense. And you can look back on those situations after and go, man, I wish I would have said this, or I wish I would have done that. But you're so thrown by saying, I went to this person for help and they literally kicked me while I was down and belittled me and yelled at me. What happened? I would look back and go, what did I say? And I even said at one point, I guess I could have framed that a little differently, but I thought they understood what I meant when I was saying that. And still, not okay for me to be attacked. And we talked a little bit about covert abuse in the last episode or two. And I think when it comes to covert narcissists versus overt narcissists, the covert, a lot of times, I think some people call it vulnerable narcissists, or, the narcissist seems like they're nice, or they're playing the victim and, oh, poor me, this thing happened to me type of situation. They're not just overtly, like the overt narcissist is like just yelling, condescending, doesn't give a shit about anybody, is just like, very aggressive. And it's very clear to see the toxicity. And it's really confusing when the abuse is covert. And so if you're an outsider hearing, this narrative about the scapegoat, or, what did the scapegoat do? Here are some clear differences to tell the difference between the abuser and the victim. And we'll put resources in for Melissa Holt. She's the narcissist expert who does a whole, I think it's like a 90-page pamphlet on this, where she talks about being able to tell the difference between the victim and the narcissist claiming to be the victim. And so in situations, the abuser will deflect blame. The victim is owning their impact, saying, I could have done this differently. I could have changed, the way I said this. I didn't do everything right. I'm not perfect. I was just trying to understand. Whereas when the abuser is deflecting blame, they're literally just saying, she is this, she did this, I didn't do anything, she's coming at me, just like not giving any information, not owning anything, just saying, oh, well, I must just be the worst parent then. That kind of thing. Completely deflecting blame. Oh, you're going to come at me? I guess I can't talk to you. I guess I'll just talk to, your brother, because you can't, I can't talk to you. If you look at the abuser side, they demand loyalty. The victim values truth. So the victim is loyal and they care and that everything is genuine, but it's not loyalty over truth ever. It's that person that's lying. If you're loyal to them, you're trying to empower them with telling the truth. You want to let them know that, maybe it was a mistake, but own it. You don't need to keep repeating the mistake. Change, do it differently next time. But honor it, own it. You don't need to hide the fact that you made a mistake. Just tell the truth. And the abuser is demanding you fall in line, you join in on this narrative, you back them up. I don't care who says what about me, this is the story. With no truth attached. The abuser refuses questions, will not answer them. The victim asks clarifying questions and welcomes clarity. Go ahead, ask me a question. I'll tell you the truth. I've said that 1,000,000 times. I'd love it if there could be clarity, if everyone could be in a room and say what happened, because I don't have anything to hide. I offer it up. I ask for clarity. There's nothing there for me to hide. But the abuser will refuse to answer questions. They deflect from questions. They ask, why are you asking that? Aren't you the one who did A, B, and C? And they try to distract and like call out some, something you did, years ago or something. Or they just say, well, I still did this or I did that. They cannot answer. Dodging. Come back to the question. Keep bringing it back to the question. Refuses to answer questions. And the second you're asking too many questions, they just shut down. They're done talking to you now.
You're describing hours and hours and hours of conversations with your dad, and conversations that your younger brother has said he's had with your dad, and your older sister has had with your dad, where they will ask direct questions, or it'll be an email chain.
Yeah.
They will ask direct questions, will not ever get an answer to that question, ever.
No, because
a new 3-page diatribe on why on women authors you should read.
Yeah, I mean, it's
will follow, but never will the question be addressed directly.
Well, and they'll pick apart, if you misspoke or you said something, you said, Mrs. instead of Miss. They'll be like, meh, actually, you can't even get that right. And you're just like, huh?
It's tunnel vision. As soon as
yes.
They're waiting for one slip up, and as soon as you say it, that's all they focus on. They don't even hear the rest of the question.
Absolutely.
And that's their response. It's going to be about that thing that you slipped up on.
All right. Yeah. Anyway, I could go on.
Yeah. Sorry. I took you down a little bit.
No,
of a
that's
rabbit
okay.
hole there,
I could go on.
That was triggering for me here because I was like, oh man, we've spent so much time having those conversations with no result.
Right. And it's tough. There's many. Another thing that the abuser does is they will use shame to control. So they try to belittle and try to make you feel bad about yourself, or try to make you feel like there's something you should feel bad about. Try to make you feel like you're wrong. And the victim actually will validate emotions and say, like, I understand, how you might feel that way if this is the story you've been given. I get that. I understand that, you didn't have a great childhood. I understand that this is upsetting to you. I also understand that it's not okay to treat someone like this. And we really do feel like we're expressing that we see that there's pain there. I'm not understanding why it's being directed at me, but I'm not trying to shame you for the way that you're treating me. I'm just saying it's not okay, and I'm not going to allow it to continue. I'm leaving. But trying to shame someone and belittle them and make them feel bad about whatever it is makes the abuser feel better. It makes them feel like they have less to be shameful for. And it's very easy to see the difference when you're doing these, comparing these. And this is my favorite one, the last one. The abuser attacks your character, and the victim discusses the behavior. So the victim is discussing what happened, why it's harmful. They're saying this is abusive, this is harmful, this is not okay. This, this hurts my feelings, this is a lie. They're actually explaining the situation, they're discussing the behavior, they're trying to find a solution. The abuser only attacks character, calls you names, says you're being manipulative. How am I being manipulative? They don't have a response to that. You're trying to control our lives. How am I trying to control your life? No answer. You're not supportive. How am I not supportive? Crickets. Like, there's nothing. These are narratives. These are accusations. They are assumptions of things that don't exist. But they don't have any facts. There's no behaviors. There's no actions that match any of these words. None. But they just keep saying the words so that they believe that this is true. How is she being controlling? How is she manipulating? What are the answers? I still haven't heard them.
Well, you haven't heard them, and it's just, they're being spoken into existence,
Right.
and then perpetuated by other family members.
Right.
How many of your other family members have told you you're being controlling or manipulative or unsupportive?
Right.
You've heard directly from them. That all started with this new person
Right.
being introduced into your family. All of those things were said by that person and then just spread like wildfire through
It's the same message.
your family. And it all gets they're all, like I said before, like it's like there's a playbook. They're all on the same page with this false narrative. And if she says this is our response. If she says this, this is our response. And it's echoed throughout those narcissists and abusers.
Whereas if you hear from the people telling the truth, or the people living in reality, or the people that actually want the clarification and the honesty, they may have things that align, or, major stances that they agree upon, but everyone's vantage point came from a different area. We realize things at different times. We don't agree on every single thing. There's a lot of nuance because that's reality. It's not black and white. It's not this. But, when you try to ask clarifying questions, that is the most revealing thing. So if someone flips out every time you ask for clarification, they're not protecting the truth. They're protecting their power. Emotional abusers don't want honesty. They want silence, loyalty, and your self-doubt. And as ADHDers, with our empathy and need for understanding, we're more easily guilted into this. Staying quiet, pausing to understand and connect the dots. Trust your instincts, not their outrage at you trusting your instincts. So the real wound that comes from this is being blamed for the abuse that you're not doing. Sharing the trauma of being cast out as the villain in this story. Reframe it. You didn't destroy the family. You disrupted this illusion that is being created or has been created. Being cast as the scapegoat is a reflection of their dysfunction, not your value. There is no scapegoat in a healthy family system. It does not exist. Everyone is accountable. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone honors each other's experiences. Everyone comes together with love. Everyone struggles at different points, and people are more supportive at different points. It is nowhere for roles to exist in a healthy family. So if you're being scapegoated, it's not healthy. It's pure dysfunction. So you're not the problem. The scapegoat is often the healthiest member of the family because they refuse to pretend. So when you stop going along with denial, you instantly become the problem. Not because you're wrong, but actually because you're right. Your clarity threatens that illusion that holds the whole system together. You didn't destroy the family. You disrupted the lie that exists. So, have you ever begged someone to tell you what you did wrong and they couldn't tell you? That's not closure. That's not a conversation. It's confirmation that you were never the problem. You were just too aware to be controlled. You were asking for clarification, and they couldn't give it to you because it doesn't exist. It's a narrative. Narcissists need scapegoats more than they need facts. So ask yourself, who benefits from the version of you that they created? They do. Period. What are they getting out of this? Why are they creating these stories? Who is it harming? Just sitting down and asking yourself when you're feeling these things, where is this coming from? Not understanding to the point where you're like, I want to understand why they're hurting and why they're attacking me. You can have empathy for that and say, you know what, I can see they're really hurting because someone that's not hurting does not act like this. And also, I don't deserve to be on the other end of an attack that has nothing to do with me. They're taking all of their unhealed shit and dumping it on me. That's not my shit. I didn't do that. If I caused harm to someone and they're bringing it back to me, that's a discussion for repair, for growth, for rebuilding. But when someone is insecure and creates a narrative and can't even tell you what you did that is such a problem, and they can't answer clarifying questions, when they call you a name, just ask. Why do you think I'm manipulative? What makes me manipulative? What am I doing that's manipulative? There's no response. What I've received is, oh, I'm not having this discussion. It's like talking in circles. I'm like, it's only talking in circles because you refuse to answer a question. So I go back to the question because you're deflecting and you're pointing here and you're accusing me of completely made up things. So I want to get back to the actual question. What did I do wrong? And they can't do it. So it's frustrating to them.
It's frustrating to you, but that's the tactic that they use. I think it was the last episode where you talked about them blaming you for the actions that they're taking. And so, the talking in circles thing, you've heard that directly when you say, I would like to have a conversation about this. The response is, well, I can't have a conversation with you because all you do is talk in circles. No. That's what they're doing.
Exactly.
And then they're blaming you for it. It's so, like, that part of it is so funny to me.
Right. It's very obvious, right? Like, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And I think that's the hard part, too, is when someone hasn't done their work and is still in this state of emotional immaturity, which we all, I was in certain aspects. I was emotionally immature just a couple of years ago and not understanding my responses and my reactions to certain things. And I still felt like I needed to explain. I needed them to understand. And I would explain till I was blue in the face with no one listening. And that was my emotional immaturity of not seeing that they didn't want to hear it. And I'm finally accepting that, they don't want to hear the truth. They're given the truth. They have the truth. They know right from wrong, and they're choosing this. And when you say, in order to repair, or here's my boundary, I'm not going to just talk about the weather or have bullshit conversations. I'm not willing to do that anymore. We need to repair from where we broke, where our relationship was ruptured. And in order for that to not repeat itself, or become a pattern of toxic behavior, we need to go back to that situation and repair from what broke us, what happened, understand what went wrong. And they don't want to go back to the situation where I was harmed, because then they have to self-reflect. Then they have to look at what they did wrong. then they have to say, I'm sorry, maybe. I mean, trust me, I don't ever think it's going to happen. But what I'm saying is these are things that are keeping them from going back to that conversation or saying, you need to understand, you haven't even asked my side of the story. We talked about last time, there's not two sides to every story in this situation. There just isn't. And there's like this false hope in believing that there's two sides. But what it is they don't want to hear your side because your side brings up too much of their own shame. It brings up too much of what the work they need to do. And they want you to do. You've always done that work. You've always been repairing. The only reason I had any contact with my family members was so if I repaired, if I conceded, if I reached out and did the repairing. And I finally just said, I'm done. And that's where it stopped. So, in closing, if this episode gave you language for your experience, share it with someone else who needs it. If you're ready to work with someone who sees your truth, reach out. You're not broken. You're waking up. Subscribe today. Until next time.